Hi, mining community. Welcome back to another episode of the Dig Deep, the mining podcast, a show that brings you the latest insights, thought leadership, and stories from across the global mining industry. In today's episode, we have Gerard O'Donovan, who's the CEO of Kaoko Metals, a company that has taken a fresh approach to building a copper story through IPO, backed by a technically strong team and a portfolio of new assets in Namibia. Gerard brings significant experience in taking companies to market, and this is a conversation we're going to explore why Kaoko has chosen the IPO route, what technical attracted him to these particular projects, and how his previous listening experience is shaping the strategy this time around. We're also going to get into why building a geology-led board matters, why copper, and why now. And importantly, how he thinks about jurisdictional risk in Namibia versus the broader African landscape. And we're going to talk a little bit more around that as well. So, Gerard, great to have you on the podcast. How are you doing?
I'm good, Rob. I'm good, Matt. How are you?
I'm good, thanks. Thank you. We're recording on a Monday, so had a good weekend like yourself. And obviously, you just from this time of recording, you just IPO'd last week, so it'd be good to hear all about that. Before we go into all of those details, just wanted you to just tell us a little bit about yourself, a little bit about your career, maybe how you got into the industry also. So just wanted you to give us a snapshot of yourself and your career.
Yeah, thanks, Rob. I'd say a few people are wondering why a guy with an Irish accent is floating a company down in Australia. But sometimes life takes a turn and you end up in a place you don't really realise. So yeah, I've been in Australia for 16 years, Rob, and I'm an engineer by background. Studied in Ireland in University College Cork and moved across to Australia with my now wife. It was Mother's Day on the weekend here down under, so we were looking after our nearest and dearest. But moved over here and moved to Perth, and it was two engineers, myself and my wife, and I equate it to flies being caught in a trap. We moved to a mecca of mining, a mecca of opportunity, and we settled here, and I got some outstanding opportunities. Perth, Australia, the mining community particularly really rewards people who show endeavour and initiative, any bit of an entrepreneurial spirit, and that was sort of told to me by one of my mentors, a person I'll talk about in a second. I bounced through a number of companies. I worked with some of the majors. I worked with BHP. I worked with Rio through different companies, and worked on Winew's copper gold project for a while at a period in my career. But I found my calling really was with like junior companies and companies that were working through discovery and moving into that development phase. After a period of working with a company called Atlas Iron, which had an amazing run during the iron ore phase here, built nearly 6 mines in a similar period of time over 6 years. I met some really amazing people there. David Flanagan, who's synonymous with mining down under, Ken Brinston, who's known for Pilbara Minerals and PMET and a lot of other companies. I ended up at Pilbara. So that's where I really got my opportunity. I joined Pilbara when there was about 20 people in the team. It was sub $100 million market cap and had just made a lithium discovery in the Pilbara. We were working out of, I remember Ken saying, a tin shed down in Frio. And I stayed with that company for nearly 6 years, and it grew into a north of $15 billion company, and it's now at all-time highs today. So I got extremely lucky in that sense. And Ken Brinston, who became a mentor of mine, and has guided me through numerous iterations of my career. And when it came to a crunch period, I always had an appetite and a desire to move into a corporate role and a corporate position. And I remember sitting down with Ken and I said, what should I do, Med? It's a bit nerve-wracking to leave a multi-billion-dollar company where you've a really steady job and you're contributing, but you're probably a rung below the corporate. I was in a project director role and an ops assistance role. And he just looked at me and said, "Matt, show some initiative, get out there, have a go. If you fail, who cares, right? You've tried." So I went and I joined a junior lithium exploration company. I stayed with them for a while, and then I with a couple of mates of mine, couple of guys who were showing entrepreneurial spirit, some really successful guys. We listed two companies in quick succession on the ASX. One was called James Bay Minerals, which ultimately became a company called Black Bear Minerals, which is now a silver exploration company in Texas. And another was a company called Sun Silver, which was a pretty successful story. We listed that $25 million market cap with a a 300 million ounce plus silver project in Nevada, and we grew that to north of 500 million ounces, and we took the market cap to north of $250 million. So, um, I got a real appetite for that side of the market, for the discovery, the exploration, the geology. I think in an earlier conversation offline, we talked about how I probably should have been a geologist in a different iteration of life, but probably that was a good thing that I didn't go that route, because I sort of was lucky to have that business sort of framework and mindset, as well as an engineer's brain to think about things a little differently. And then that leads us to Kaoko around 18 months ago. A new opportunity came. The thematic was staring us in the face. I sat down with two unbelievably clever geologists who have an eye for discovery, an eye for finding amazing assets, and the idea was born, and away we went.
Great. I just want to go back to, obviously, you mentioned a few of your mentors. Do you think it's essential that you have mentors? And also, how has that shaped your career to date by having those mentors?
Yeah, mate. Like, no one is an expert in all fields. We all go through life, and if anyone says they are, then they're probably not the person you should be dealing with, right? I think having a bit of humility in this industry is pretty important, and reaching out and surrounding yourself with people who know their field well. It's it's the age old saying, a rising tide lifts all boats. So if you can do that, So mentors were hugely important to me. Sounding boards, they're not specifically mentors by any stretch of the imagination. A lot of them are just mates that I ask their opinion, and I bounce ideas off. As I say, Ken is one. There's multiple other guys. Chris Evans is a guy there who ran Winsome Resources. It just got taken out by Lift Power out of Canada. And other guys, guy Adam Ritchie, who runs a company called Loyal Metals, that recently got taken out. Guys like that are just people who are very clever, very savvy within the industry. Everyone thinks a little differently. No one is wired the same. So you may think your idea is the best idea, but sometimes it just takes someone to challenge you a little bit and ask you a different question, and then you might sort of think about things in a slightly different mindset. And they're hugely important. It's something I'd encourage any junior engineer, any junior geologist, or someone like that. A lot of the major companies do it, and a lot of the junior companies too. And it's what I say to all younger guys I see now is, look, you have my number. Feel free to give me a ring. I may not have the correct answer, but at least we can sort of nod it out a little bit and understand. So yeah, Rob, I think it's very important to surround yourself with good people, and people from multiple different industries, commodities, metals, markets. Guys who work in capital markets and brokers, all the way down to guys who are geos and field techs in the field, because everyone has, as I said, their area of expertise, and if you can just pick up 5% of what they know, and you have that 5% across multiple different areas, then you can be a bit of a dangerous character within the industry, and pretty decently rounded.
Yeah, and I totally agree with yourself around mentors as well. So hopefully some of those that are listening will take that on board. So I wonder if you just give us a snapshot of Kaoko.
Yeah, so simplistically, Kaoko is a Namibian copper focused company that has two projects in Namibia. We're listed on the ASX. We listed, as you said, last Thursday at a market cap of $12.1 million. We raised $6.5 million. We had which had put us in a cash position before costs of $6.8 million. and we closed today at about 39 cents. So we've had a really, really good open. That market cap sort of doubled. We've got a lot of happy shareholders, but a lot of people now want to see us do work on our projects. So our two projects, as I said, are copper focused. Our primary undertaking, our main project, is the Chalcos copper silver, so sedimentary hosted copper silver project in the Kunene region, which is in sort of northwestern Namibia. It's a large land package. It's 80,000 hectares. It's 40 kilometers, which sits on the Atavi subgroup, which is the mineral bearing subgroup. 20 kilometers of mineralized strike within that area, which has been proven to be mineralized. And then within that, there's a 700 kilometer or 700 meter. Oh, I wish it was kilometers. 700 meter zone, which is high grade copper, where we see grades up to 69.6% copper at surface and 2,030 grams a ton silver at surface. So I'll touch on how we found it in a second, but this particular project sits in a really underexplored region in northern Namibia. Three main copper belts in Africa for your listeners, Central African Copper Belt, which is synonymous with Robert Friedel and all these guys for major copper discoveries. Kalahari Copper Belt, obviously another major copper belt, which is not pretty well explored, but has seen a lot of action. And then the third and least explored is the Kaoko Belt, where we're looking and we're exploring, and where the genesis of our name is from. And within that Kaoko Belt, there's some really successful stories as well. So, Tsumeb produced 1.7 million tons of copper at 4.3%. So really impressive results. Then there's a company, Midas Minerals. They're ASX listed. They've recently released a maiden resource of 10.5 million tons at 2% copper, and they just had some of the best intercepts in the world this year, copper-wise, 50 meters at 5.55%. So amazing copper grades. So that region is ripe for discovery. It's very underexplored. It just needs someone to show the attention. And when I met the mining commissioner from the Kunene region, she was delighted to see people come in and spend money. It's had some network done. It's recovered up to 89% copper. But it hasn't had much drilling. It hasn't had any drilling, Rob, to be completely honest. It's just one of those assets which was picked up from an anomaly that was identified on a government available website. It was pegged, and the vendors and the explorers, the geologists who found it, who will continue to work with us, they went there, they walked up this hill, and they walked upon this outcrop of copper. So it's a really exciting early stage project. It is in northern Namibia. It's in accessible terrain but rugged terrain. It's in elephant country. I use the analogy, if you want to find an elephant, you have to go to elephant country sometimes, and that's where we've gone to explore. And we've coupled it with a really good copper gold project in the Caribib region, which sits in the Damara Belt, which is in the middle of Namibia. So just about 2 hours north of Windhoek, which is the capital. But that's host to some major gold discoveries recently, such as Navaja between Hills of Sino. And that has a bit of drilling there. A little bit of drilling, 500 meters, has hit gold. 0.92 grams a ton gold, 1.92% copper, 0.72% tungsten, which is very topical at the moment, over 4 meters. But it's mineralized, it's endowed, it's in the right geological setting. So we talked about discovery, you talked about our route to IPO, which we'll unpack a bit more in a second. But our thesis was find projects in geological favorable terrain, in the right rocks, with the right characteristics, with a sniff of mineralization or proven mineralization. And then it all comes down to the drilling. It all comes down to the lots of people go and look in the wrong locations. We've looked in the right locations. We've found the right rocks. I'm really excited about trying to prove up some scale.
This episode is sponsored by Mining International. In today's market, finding the right mining talent isn't easy. Mining International works closely with mining companies to identify and secure senior and technical professionals through a tailored search approach. If you're hiring or exploring your options, you can contact Rob Tyson via the show notes to start a conversation today.
before we obviously speak about the projects, and you've just, obviously you mentioned about IPOing last week. Why why IPO a company with obviously new assets over other routes to market?
Yeah, look, a lot of people will ask the question, oh, why didn't you keep it private and work it up a little bit and invest some money in it? And then others would say, why won't you RTO it or reverse takeover or use a shell, or there's multiple different terminologies around the world for that sort of avenue. And look, we considered it, but we also, when you IPO a company, it's the word is the I suppose the explanation's in the wording. It's an initial public offering, right? So it's something you structure, it's something you build a team around, it's something you plan for the assets, you plan for the money you raise, and you build a register, and you have your your fingers all over that register if you're working in conjunction with a good broker or a good lead manager. And what it can do is, I suppose, the proof is in the pudding. You look at the result from our IPO. The share price is appreciated, and we've built a solid register. So the key for us really, Rob, was number one, were the assets technically sound? Yes, tick. And then the question is, what route do you go? So we were always super keen on an IPO. The reason being, obviously, sometimes with earlier stage assets, there's a bit of a nervousness, there's a bit of risk. They're not as well advanced. There's I suppose the risk profile is higher. But you can structure the IPO to suit that. So that's what we did. We built a team, which I know we'll talk about in a second, of explorers and guys who are known for discovery and known for picking good geological projects. So when we put these projects in front of Mark and Jody, they looked at them and they were like, yes, we understand what you were trying to achieve here. Then we structured the IPO in a fashion that the enterprise value of the company upon listing was only $5.3 million. So for projects with those characteristics, even though they are early stage, there's very good value there. There's a lot of value still, and the upside, the blue sky potential is huge. If we do see that success. And then the register. So I was pretty hands on in building this with the people we dealt with the money that was invested. We raised $6.5 million. It was heavily supported, oversubscribed in area. It was, and the people who are in this register are fully aligned with what we're trying to achieve as a company. So, if you RTO, or if yes, doing a RTO is a quicker route to market. You can put it into a company that has existing cash, but it also sometimes comes with the legacy of maybe jaded shareholders who've seen some value destruction over a period of time within the company they invested their money in. So, we have set a strategy which our investors have aligned with and have endorsed and have bought in by investing their money. They endorse the team, they like the team, and they look at the projects and they go, yes, there's value here. So doing that, structuring that. Also, there's an element of the stock that's escrowed. Myself, for instance, the other management, the vendors, there's nearly 41% of this stock that's escrowed, so locked up for 12 or 24 months, no sale. So it creates an even tighter register, and an aligned register. So that's the reason we went the IPO route, was to do that, and also to give another offering in the copper space on the ASX, in this sort of range. So yeah, look, I think it's proven to be successful to date. We've seen quite a good bit of liquidity through the stock. A lot of people are interested in getting into it now. We traded well over $1 million day one. We've traded over $250,000 today, I think, and something similar last Friday. So there is interest, and I think a lot of it is down to timing too, Rob. If the market is hot and the thematic is hot, then sometimes RTOing is the way to go. But we were committed to the IPO, and we're happy we did so.
Great. So going back to the projects, what technically attracted you to these particular assets?
Yeah, so the geological setting of Chalcos was very appealing and compelling. I sort of mentioned earlier, a lot of people don't. I'm not saying they don't place. I suppose a lot of investors don't really, sometimes really delve into the geological data. Neurology can play a lot. Drill results, history, but understanding. And I spend a lot of time talking to analysts, and understanding what they want to see. And these guys are clever guys, so they see if the setting is correct, if it's in the right rocks, the right era, the right age, um, and that was the number one thing that drew us to Chalcos. The fact that it was heavily mineralized and the significant grades was a huge bonus. So, I mentioned earlier Donkey Hill and Othniel. So Donkey Hill's around 700 meters long. That has grades up to 69.6% copper and 2,030 grams per ton silver. But it's also sulfide minerals at surface, outcropping at surface. So, a lot of the time we see an oxidized capping on top of these deposits, which is, really good grades. But seeing sulfides, you see the evidence of the system, and that's what got us really excited. So we were seeing chalcosites, boronites, chalcopyrites at surface. So that was hugely attractive. And then also the fact that, there was only 700 meters of a small amount of the actual whole area was explored. So 80,000 hectares, that 20 kilometers of mineralized trend, which really hasn't been mapped outside of Donkey Hill and Othniel. We saw significant scope for growth and blue sky potential. And we see, just through assessing government data, that there's lots of other areas that we can probably go and explore and hopefully have success. So the opportunity for discovery, there's not many people out there now trying to discover the next major copper mine or the next major copper discovery. A lot of people are picking up assets that may be stranded or may not have fit a thematic 10 years ago, but all of a sudden a price is appreciating and an old mine which sat in care and maintenance or was doing something now becomes pretty hot again. We decided that wasn't for us. We decided we wanted to go and find these assets and drill them. So that's what really attracted us to Chalcos. Also the fact that the metallurgical test work had been done. So the guys sort of skipped a step. They found the assets, they mapped the assets, they then went and did these bulk samples. So they took 208 kilogram bulk samples. They did some bench scale test work and they leached copper up to 89%. So they sort of skipped the step in the middle, which has proved the scale. They didn't drill it. But there's a reason for that. There's a massive DSO, direct shipping ore market within Namibia where you basically dig it up and you truck it to a port and you ship it off to a vendor somewhere or a purchaser, and then they do the rest of the processing. So we felt that there was a significant value to be added in that middle portion, which is drilling, and it's been somewhat de-risked. So that's what attracted us to Chalcos, was high-grade mineralization, scope for growth, the underexplored nature, the met work, and the fact that the team who discovered it will continue to be involved. So those guys will continue to be our exploration team and will work with us into the future. And then from Caribib's perspective, it's mineralized. We can see there's gold, there's copper, there's a 20-kilometer structural trend. There's only been 500 meters of drilling. All those drill holes have just been to about 100 meters or less. And a lot of the discoveries in the region trend below that. The tungsten aspect has become more interesting in the last, couple of months. It's definitely becoming a very topical thing. All these sort of niche metals and commodities driven predominantly by, national security of different countries. That was interesting as well. So that's a very accessible asset. It sits in a region which is undertaking massive growth just due to huge mines developing. So that was very attractive, and we can get in there and we can actually deploy an RC program there pretty quickly, and we'll be on the ground there in the near term. And sits in a really good geological setting again. So the same as Navahab, multi-million ounce gold mine, same geological setting as Twin Hills Asino, which was on the TSXV and got taken out and was by a private entity. And then there's a WA company or an Australian company called Wea Gold. They've got the Cocosed project, which has a nearing on 3 million ounce resource. Again, so not a lot of people exploring in the region, even though there is major discovery, and we felt, wow, we can pick this up for relatively cheap consideration. It's an earn-in or a farm-in up to 85%, and we can get in there and drill it straight away. So, I think I sort of like a parrot saying the rocks are very important and we're in the right rocks. So that's what drew us to these projects.
Obviously, this isn't the first time that you listed a company, as you've mentioned, or even gone down the IPO route. Can you just tell us about that, obviously, and how that will impact the company's listing?
Yeah, look, I sort of explained it earlier on, but there is a number of implications that come along with that. So, I mentioned earlier around escrow conditions. So, when you list a company, there is an element of the stock that gets locked up for a period of time. That's generally just due to either being management who have acquired stock in the company, or vendors who have stock in the company and they're not allowed to sell for a period of time. Um, and then that just creates a much tighter register. So, like, of the 60 million shares we have an issue, approximately 41% of that is escrowed. So, there's a touch over 30 million shares are actually tradable at the moment. So it's not a huge amount. And then when it's a liquid stock, it just creates more swings in the share price as well, and you can actually see that appreciation quite a lot more. We also have, a lot of management involvement. So there's 21% is owned by the founders, and there's about 14% owned by the managed board, the board particularly. So you can see it creates alignment amongst the management and the team and the people behind it, and the shareholders, to make sure that this is a success. So the people who've invested their money along the way, and at the IPO, and the people who are now buying into the stock, they're buying into a register which is completely aligned to make this a success. So that's sort of, the IPO does create that that sort of scenario. And also it's just fresh. It brings something new to the market. It gets a bit of a buzz and euphoria around the actual entity and the team. People, there was a period there, I think a number of years ago, there was over 200 IPOs on the ASX. It was absolutely crazy. There was one a week, if not, one way more than a week. But no, it has trailed off a bit, market downturn, and when shells become available. But yeah, it's a route I've been down before. As I said, with Sun Silver, listed at $25 million, now trading at well over $200 million. With James Bay Minerals, which rebranded to Black Bear, I think it was a $13 million market cap, and that's now north of $100 million. So there's significant opportunity for value creation if you find the right assets, put the right team together, and build the right register.
Your board looks extremely strong, obviously, from a geological perspective. Why do you think this is important, and important for Kaoko Metals?
Yeah, well, you got to recognize, Rob, the sort of the type of company you are and where you sit within that project life cycle, or a lot of people refer to the Lassonde curve now, and sort of pick points along that, and pick parts of the journey from. And I know that's like directly linked to value as well. But we're at the very, very first point of that, right? We are essentially exploration. And all the value creation is upwards from here, we would hope, pending discovery. So there's no real reason to put people who are going to build mines tomorrow on it. We want people who are going to guide us and who are going to ask us the questions and provide us with governance that is appropriate to an early stage exploration company. So that's where non-executive chair Mark Thompson comes in. So Mark has founded companies in his own right. So he is a founder, managing director of Talga Group. Primary asset in Sweden, graphic technology and graphite mine. But he Mark's a bit of a prospector as well. He loves being out in the field. He loves looking at rocks. I think half the time he'd rather be out there in his shorts looking at rocks than he would in an office in a suit. But he provides us with unbelievable guidance and knowledge and history and experience in capital markets, stemming across to exploration and discovery and where we should go next. And then Jody Derouge, who is probably, if people don't know him, they should look him up. He's an extremely clever, reputable geologist. He's well known for being involved in the discovery of Patriot Battery Metals, rebranded to PMETS, Corvette project, which it was originally called, and has been rebranded recently to a new name in Quebec, and also Q2. The Q2's project recently, which just released the 4th largest lithium resource in the world. But Jody's also well known for Derouge Consulting. They've got a stack of geos who are out in the field for early stage exploration guys all the time. So Jody knows what good looks like. And when we put the project in front of him, it was purely from a do you like the project and would you like to be involved perspective. And his answer was, yes, I do, and I like the people, I like what you're doing here, and I would like to be involved. So it's great having an aligned board, but it's also great having a board that, questions me and probes me and ensures that what I'm doing is the best custodian work of shareholders' money, which is my responsibility, and deploying it in the right places, such that we explore cleverly, efficiently and relatively frugally too. We want to put money in the right spots here. And that's what we'll do. We'll have field work ongoing in the near term, and then we'll roll drill rigs in and we'll put the money in the ground because that's where it should go, Rob.
Yeah. Obviously, you're focusing on copper. Why is copper the space to be in at the moment?
Yeah, look, if you look at the thematic from a top down level, it's pretty compelling. The structural deficit is growing. We look at forecasts in 2030, which are huge, and into 2040, and a lot of it is driven by essentially just the technological world booming. I sort of talk about data centers and AI, and if people aren't using ChatGPT now, I read an article on the A4 last night or how a fund manager decided he would use ChatGPT for a period of time to determine what his investment thesis and philosophy should be, right? And that's a fund manager or who did it for the A4. It was more a theory piece. But I've no doubt there's people actually doing that every day of the week. People are using Claude to develop all sorts of things for them now. That is the world we live in. And it's driven by massive data centers and computers with kilometers and kilometers of cabling, and that cabling is copper. And then also like data centers I mentioned, you see them everywhere now. There's no one sitting at their desk with a tower computer anymore. Everyone has a laptop and, has a phone, and all your pictures and files, they just go to the cloud. And we're all now clicking on, I don't want gigabytes of storage, I want terabytes of storage now, and we're purchasing it through different platforms and scenarios. And again, that's copper. So the physical demand is there. You can see it. The refining capacity has dropped off. It's just not there. And then coming all the way back to the mines and discovery, we're seeing mines close down rather than mines open, and we're seeing discovery expenditure drop, or expenditure into exploration discovery drop. So it was a pretty simple sort of scenario for us. It's something the guys, when I went and joined, Sun Silver had identified extremely similarly. That's when the silver price we listed, I think it was $26 an ounce when we listed it just a little under 2 years ago. And it ran all the way up to north of 100 there in recent weeks, and looks to be bouncing back up again. And again, we see something similar in copper. All-time highs hitting $6.30, I think, on Friday night, and only going one direction. So the thematic was important to us. We knew that, but then again, we wanted to make sure we had given ourselves the best chance of a discovery, and that's why the technological assessment and technological setting of the projects is very important, or the technical setting. Yeah, and look, I don't think anyone can argue with the fact that copper is one of those ones that's been teetering for a long time. Everyone's just been waiting for it to rip, and now we're starting to see green shoots coming, and all of a sudden, could just be a matter of time before it starts to run and run really, really hard.
I just wondering if you just tell us a little bit about Namibia as a mining jurisdiction, maybe talk about sovereign risk and how it compares to other African mining jurisdictions.
Yeah, so look, Namibia is voted number 4 attractiveness index by the Fraser Institute in Africa. So it's definitely one of the lesser risky countries within Africa. But it's an amazing country. For anyone who hasn't been there, you know, go. I'm not going to lie. It's extremely safe. It's extremely family friendly. It's got amazing scenery, amazing safari. It's an amazing country, and it's also got amazing geology, which is what drew us there. So, um, really progressed mining framework. So hell of a lot of uranium mining, gold mining, and more, and oil and gas as well. So if you go down the coast, down around that Orange Basin, you'll see Total and all the major players there in the region, exploring for oil. So it's extremely well advanced. It's welcoming, Rob. I mentioned earlier in the piece, I met the mining commissioner for the Canene region at Indaba this year. I shook her hand and she said, "Look, we welcome your investment into our country, and we look forward to you working there." So, reasonably favourable tax rates, royalty rates, nothing too crazy. Um, nothing like other countries where you see, mining permits revoked and reclaimed and taken back. And I won't talk specifically about different jurisdictions because I don't want to be specifically derogatory to one over the other or anything like that. But we have seen elements of that in recent times where, some of the best projects in the world are located in jurisdictions that will just not let them be developed. And that's just the unfortunate nature of how Africa works at times, and other regions as well. So we had no real qualms or no real concerns about entering into Africa. Very simple permitting process. We've got a exclusive prospecting license, which allows us to explore, to drill, to trench, to rock chip, to do surveys, to walk the ground. We've got all the access we need, the agreements in place, and we've got the support of the local people as well. And we will utilize those local people. There is a reasonably experienced community and mining community there that will assist us in our work. So it's a great country. Our experience there to date has been fantastic, and I look forward to getting back over there in a couple of weeks when we're in the field doing more work and we're kicking things along.
And lastly, what's the short to medium term outlook for Kaoko Metals looking out next to 12 to 18 months, say? And if there's anything else that you want to share with our audience?
Yeah, no, Rob. So look, drilling really. We're going to get rigs in the field as quickly as we can. Little bit of I suppose prep work for that first. So we'll put some fieldwork teams in. We'll carry out some geophysics. We'll do some airborne surveys, and then we'll start defining targets. We have some walk up targets already in both of the prospects, which we know. And we'll have teams in the field in the coming weeks, defining those targets. And we already have gone to tender for drilling contracts as well. So. We'll likely roll an RC rig, a reverse circulation rig, into Caribbean quite quickly, and we'll expand on that very small program that was done before. And we'll just try and define the mineralization there, and try and grow that. But primarily at Chalcos, we've a large land package to explore. It's structurally controlled sediment hosted copper, so we'll bring a diamond rig in there within the next couple of months, and we'll drill that. We really want to start demonstrating scale in Chalcos. We want to show people that there is the potential for something here. And the way we can do that is by bringing a rig in. So our teams are already in the field. Sorry, they're not in the field as of yet, but our teams are already ready for the field. So Lex Rocks are ready to mobilize, and they're in country exploration group. And once we give them the go ahead, they'll be working. That's the beauty of having in-country guys. We have an in-country manager, Lysias Pius. He's based in Windhoek, so very well connected. And Dr. Ismail Kangui, who's our lead geologist in Namibia as well. So, I mentioned it earlier, Rob. Like our intent here is, to spend money in the ground exploring, and to try and make a discovery. If we make a discovery, we'll roll more rigs in, and it'll be a flurry of activity and drilling for the next, as you said, 12 to 18 months. And outside of that, look, our responsibility as a company is to keep people informed, and we will do that. Some people will be sick of my face probably, but that's my job. My job is to tell people what we are doing with the money they invested, and it's also to tell people who are considering investing what we plan to do. And if that's an appropriate or a risk that people want to take and want to invest, then that's great. We've done our job by outlining the jobs and the intent and the strategy we have. So, yeah, mate, we're not going to sit in our hands. We're certainly not a lifestyle company. We want to go out and explore and try and find something, and hopefully that's what we'll do.
Gerard, really appreciate your time. Thank you for obviously sharing your journey, telling us about Kaoko Metals, and obviously the recent IPO, which obviously was a success. So if our audience wants to obviously reach out to you, if they obviously want to follow the story, have questions about how your drilling program is going, what social media platform channels are you on, and how can people get in contact?
Yeah, so we're on LinkedIn and X, and then obviously we have our website, which is kaokometals.com. If you go to kaokometals.com, we have a pretty robust investor center which you can link through to and sign up, and that will automatically apply you to our mailing list. So you'll get regular updates on behalf of what we're doing from an announcement perspective and from an activity perspective. And that's a place where we sort of we collate all the information we do, Rob. So this conversation today, we'll share that there, and we'll share this on all our social media platforms. And also, if anyone wants to contact us directly, our email address, so info@kaokometals.com, and we'll respond. So, as I said, we're active. We want to engage with shareholders, with prospective shareholders. We want people to ask us questions. That's what we're here for. So, yeah, feel free to fire them at us, and we'll get back to you as quickly as we can.
Great. We'll include those all in the show notes for easy access, so our audience can reach out to you, follow the story, and ask you all the questions. So, good luck with the drilling campaign. I'm sure it'll be a success. And maybe you want to come on later this year or even next year, give us an update, and maybe talk about something else. Maybe talk about the copper market, or anything else that you feel could be relevant at that particular time.
No, I appreciate it, Rob, and I look forward to talking again.
Yeah, great. Thank you for listening. Hope you enjoyed the episode. As always, appreciate your continued support. Please keep sharing these episodes far and wide. Obviously, copper is in the news at the moment and will be for a very long time. It's needed for obviously electrification of many of the things that we use in day-to-day life. So obviously what Gerard's doing in Namibia is obviously exploration, and we wish him well for the remainder of the year and his exploration program. So thank you for listening. Hope you enjoyed the episode, and please appreciate if you can share this episode far and wide. Thanks for listening, and happy mining.